Here are 5 good things about being broke and unemployed. Although being broke and unemployed is generally a bad thing, and we could agree that we would all prefer to have a job than not to have a job, in every dark situation, there are positives that come out of it. So, here are 5 things I think are positive about being broke and unemployed. The first one is it gives you an abundance of time. So, when you're employed, you're sort of limited about how you could spend your time, especially if you have a full time job. You have to commute back home, and generally, you have less energy, and that energy is spent taking a shower, changing clothes, eating dinner. By the time you get your basic errands done, especially if you don't work remotely, if you drive into the office, which a lot of companies are doing RTO right now, return to office policy, your 8 hour workday is actually probably closer to 9 or 10. So think about it, you have 24 hours in a day, 10 of it is to work, including the commute. Another hour or two is doing your errands, showering, brushing your teeth, cooking dinner. And then if you want, your brain to like work, you need to sleep at least 7 to 8 hours. So do the math. How much freedom do you actually have? You only have a handful of hours. And, most people are so drained after their job, they're not going to put as much energy as they would have into their hobbies as if they were unemployed. So the one big one is that you do have the time and energy to work on your hobbies. You have the time and energy to work on yourself. You could exercise. You could do research on topics you like, such as, starting a business, learning a new technology or a new skill, learning marketing or art, or learning how to play guitar, or learning how to start a business, or starting a YouTube channel. Those are just a few of many examples. But yes, it gives you time to work on things you wouldn't have time to work on before if you did have a job. And in that same, the first, in that same category of time, it also gives you time to think. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you have a full-time job, even when you clock out of work still lingers in your mind. So even if you try to stop thinking about work, subconsciously, a lot of times you're still thinking about work. So when you don't have a job and you're not in that mental space anymore because you're not employed by anyone, you have the time and energy to think for yourself. You have the time to reflect on your own life, and you could just sit and ponder different ideas, and you could shine a light on aspects of your life that you weren't able to shine a light on before, whether it's a concern that you had about yourself that you never had time to think about. For example, your health or your mental health. Maybe it's been a long-term goal you wanted to achieve. Maybe you wanted to go do something like write a book, but you never were able to do it. Now you have the time to think and plan and do things like that. So that's the first example, which is a huge one. Time and energy. Okay. The second one is sort of tied to the first example, which I gave. But example 2, top 5 things. The second one is the ability to be creative. When you're working a 9 to 5, especially a corporate job, you're surrounded by such corporate energy and fake smiles and lame office jokes that no matter how hard you try to hold on to your soul, that office job is going to take some of that soul, even though you want to be yourself after work, being in a corporate office for about 8 or 9 hours a day will affect you, no matter how hard you try to avoid it. And as a result, you are less of yourself and you are less creative. But when you're no longer in that space, when you don't have someone to report to, when you don't have to worry about a human resources office, and you are broke and unemployed, and all you do is sit in your room. There's no one there to monitor you or tell you you can't do something or you can't say something. So you could be as creative as you want. You could curse. You could write a book, about joke. You could write a joke book that's the most racist joke book you ever made, and sell it on Etsy and make $1 million if it's actually funny. You could do that. I'm not condoning you to do that. That's just an example. I'm not writing a racist joke book, for the record. I was just giving an example. Okay, I don't condone doing that. Unless it's like satire and it's actually funny and people get it, then that's on you. Anyways, but yes, you get to be creative. And when you are employed, the job steals that creativity and soul from you, regardless of how hard you try to hold on to that. And in that same note, being broke and unemployed, it allows you to be yourself more. Working for someone, you can't be yourself fully, because if you are, a lot of you guys would be fired. Some of you have already been fired for being yourself. But when you're broke and unemployed, you don't have to worry about that. You could be yourself within reason, of course. If I came on this YouTube channel and I said some really crazy things, and then future employers would find the video and be like, is this you on this video saying these crazy things? Obviously, there are consequences to your actions in general life. But what I'm saying is, when you don't work at a job, you could, within reason, be yourself, without worrying about getting fired if you don't have a job to get fired from. And the reason is because you're not influenced by being in a corporate setting. When you're out of that setting and you are just you every single day, every single minute of your life, you kind of get your soul back. I feel like I'm the most myself now than I have ever been, versus the last 5-7 years when I was working constantly. This is the most authentic I've ever been, and I would say it's the most confident. Aside from being financially broke, I think mentally and spiritually, I am the most confident now than I have ever been. Okay, so that was number 2. So far we got time and energy to do stuff, getting creative. Number three, I would say, is minimalism. In 2020, I had an abundance of cash. I wasn't rich, but I had disposable income. I couldn't spend my money if I wanted to because of the pandemic. And I think that was the case for most of us. And the way I spent my money to cope with boredom, I just bought so many Funko Pops and random toys. I still have some on my desk. I'll show you. I have a Funko Spider-Man. I have a Lego Frankenstein. I have so many random things. Look, I have another Funko Spider-Man. This is just a few that I keep on my desk. I probably had 30 of these Funko Pops and random toys and random Lego toys, because I was bored and I just wanted to spend money. And most of these things, I took it off my desk. It's sitting in a box collecting dust somewhere. And I think when you're broke and unemployed, you tend to spend less money on things you don't need, such as things like this and like this. Alright? They're fun to have, but at a certain point, you just buy so many out of just, boredom, or you just want the dopamine hit of spending money, that you end up with a bunch of garbage that you don't need. And then you have the problem of, where do I need to put this stuff? They're not functional, they're not practical, I just wasted money. This money could have went to something better to invest in myself. I could have invested in stocks instead of buying these stupid toys. But you don't realize that when you have too much income coming in because you're distracted. You're like, whatever, that's not even like 5% of my paycheck. It's just like $15. But when you're broke and unemployed, that $15, is not 5% of your income anymore. So when you're broke and unemployed, you spend more carefully. You have less clutter in your room, and that leads to less headache because you realize what purchases are actually valuable in your life, what things you actually need. Like, for example, you probably need a can opener. If you have canned food and soup and you don't have a can opener, that's something you should have. If you don't have enough underwear, you should invest in underwear. There's like basic things like that. But when you're broke and unemployed, you shouldn't be buying, little novelty toys and Funko Pops and I don't know, like shaker cups. I have like 3 shaker cups. I only need 1. Why do I have 3? But yeah, you realize how much money you actually wasted when you did have income. And when you're going through this phase of being financially unstable and not having a job, it puts you in the right mental mindset of what spending should look like. So when you do have your next job, you're able to better manage your finances, and you are able to identify when you're spending irresponsibly versus something that actually you should buy. So yes, minimalism is the third good thing about being broke and unemployed. Now the fourth one is being humble. Some people, when they get into a large sum of money or they get hired for a high paying job, they carry themselves a little bit different. And sometimes it's not necessarily a better difference, Now, being confident is a good thing. If you come into a large sum of money and you invest in yourself and you're able to do things and you're probably more confident, and that's a good thing. There's nothing bad about being confident, dressing nicer, having a few nice things here and there. That's fine. But some people get on their high horse. They start preaching to other people. They start looking down on others. They start treating others, a little bit worse. They're mean to waiters. They're impatient. They have no sympathy to people that have less or are less capable or can't do the same things you could do. They start looking down on people. And that's not a good thing. That's people that need to be humble. And I think when you're broke and unemployed, it messes with your ego. And when you could accept that something bad is happening to you and you're powerless and you can't do what you want to do. You can't do something as simple as, booking a flight somewhere or buying an expensive dinner or buying a gift for a loved one. It humbles you. And then when you go see homeless people that they can't afford food or they're asking for money, or you see someone that's on welfare but they're trying, they have kids but they can't get a job, you're not saying, oh, these people are lazy, they need to work harder. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I worked really hard and yet I'm struggling to feed myself too. So how am I to judge someone who has kids and they're struggling? You don't know what they're going through. So because you're in sort of the shoes of struggling, the shoes of financially struggling, you could relate to people in similar shoes. You could be sympathetic to homeless people, to people on welfare, poor communities, instead of, if you were just living and growing up in Beverly Hills, where your parents drove a Rolls Royce everywhere, you would think that, oh, these poor people aren't working hard enough, because in your mindset you worked hard because you grew up on third base and you made a home run. But because I am going through something like this and other people are also going through being broke and unemployed, we could be like, hey, some of us weren't born on third base. Some of us were born in the parking lot and we barely got into the stadium and we're not even in the team. How are we going to make a home run? Anyways, that's a crazy analogy, But you get the point. You become compassionate about other people who are down, other people who are struggling, because you realize how it feels and you could relate to them. So that's 4. That was humbleness. All right. So the last one is, the last good thing about being broke and unemployed is that sometimes it could be a blessing in disguise. But depending on your mindset, it could always be a blessing in disguise. And here's how. You know, when you lose your job, whatever way you lost it, and you're down financially, and things are looking rough in your life, you know, you're going through a curveball and things are weird, it's a break in the routine of your mundane life. You know how many people going through their 9 to 5, sitting in traffic, you know, they're financially secure, but they're going crazy and they're going depressed because they just need a break in their routine, but they're scared to take any action because they're scared of, you know, not being secure financially. But when life literally takes that security out of your hands, and it was never your choice in the first place, life gave it to you. Now, you're forced to have a break in your routine, which is what many people ask for. And what's good about breaking out of your routine is that it's a chance to be spontaneous. It's a chance to try new things that you haven't tried before. You know, maybe you needed time to chase that dream of yours, or do something you always wanted to do, or challenge your mind, but you never had the chance to. But now that you're not in your routine anymore, you could do it. If I never got laid off from my job, all the videos on this channel would have never existed. Why in the world would I make these videos if I had a stable job? But now, because I have the time and energy, I'm able to connect with an audience. There's people leaving comments in my videos that I could read. People now see my face and they're able to hear my voice and relate to what I'm saying. And this would have never been possible if I never got laid off and if the job market never went to shit. Alright, so I guess it's a blessing in disguise. And this YouTube channel has been really fun to work on. And now I have something else. I have another project that I could invest in. So yeah, you know, this has been a blessing in disguise. And we're still on number 5. The other point I wanted to make was that when you're broke and unemployed, you go into survival mode. You get creative and go after what you really want. Things aren't comfortable anymore. When you're broke and unemployed, besides this doesn't apply if you grow up in a rich family, because if you're a trust fund kid and you wake up and your parents are millionaires and they're giving you money, that's different. And that's not my case. Look at my room. This is not a room of a millionaire, okay? I'm sure you could tell. Yes. What was I saying? Oh yeah, survival mode. You when you're broke and unemployed, it's a blessing in disguise because you start to think and plan ahead. What should I do? What am I good at? If this is not an option anymore, what else is an option? What is plan dream? Not plan B, plan D. What was my dream that I never went for? You know, how much time do I have left before I'm on the street? Maybe I could spend 1 month attempting this dream once in my life and seeing how it goes. Blessing in disguise. And lastly, it's a mental reset. You know, without a curveball thrown at us, a lot of us are just floating. You know, we're like, work Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you stay home, go shopping, go out for a little bit. Monday, you do the same thing. How long could you really do that for? When life throws you a curveball and you're broke and unemployed, you get a whole mental reset. Everything that made sense before, that doesn't make sense anymore. Like, everything's new. You have a new schedule. Monday's not Monday anymore. Monday's Saturday. Tuesday's Sunday. Saturday's Monday. Sunday's Tuesday. Like, your schedule, there's no schedule. Throw the calendar away. All right, you just need to know what month it is. The days don't matter. Sometimes, depending on your situation, the time doesn't matter. If you don't have a girlfriend or whatever, 12 o'clock might as well be 3 p.m., to be honest. That's not my case. I have to stay on a schedule for respect for my partner, for my girlfriend. But for some of you who are single, yeah, 12 a.m. can be 1 p.m. I've been there, trust me. Alright, anyways, those were my top 5 things, top 5 good things about being broke and unemployed. Let's recap. The first one was you have the time and energy to do stuff. 2 is the ability to get creative. 3 is minimalism. 4 is learning to be humble. And 5 is that the situation can be a blessing in disguise. Alright, what do you guys think about that top 5 list of good things about being broke and unemployed? Let me know your opinion in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.